What if I told you Japan's loudest band broke America, fired their own frontman, chased the Sunset Strip, and nearly lost everything? Loudness made history, then vanished in a mess of lineup changes, label pressure, and Western dreams gone sideways. Here's how that mess went down.
Like, subscribe. Thank you.
Loudness did not just creep on the scene, they detonated. May 1981, Osaka. Akira Takasaki and Munetaka Higuchi broke free from the soft glow shackles of their old pop rock band, Lazy. They weren't interested in chart fluff anymore. They wanted weight. They wanted volume. So they built something heavier. Takasaki roped in his old friend, Masayoshi Yamashita, on bass, and they found a wild card in Minoru Nihara, a soul singer with pipes strong enough to burn through steel. They hit the studio in August, and 3 months later, the birthday eve dropped like a thunderclap. No warm-up or slow climb, just pure fire. The debut show sold out. 2,700 bodies packed into the Asakusa International Theater, proving the old myth wrong. Hard rock was marketable in Japan, and people were actually starved for it. Loudness were completely riding that new wave of British heavy metal phenomenon that was sweeping through Japan, and just like that, a monster was born. They only had one album out, but it didn't matter. Every venue they touched went supernova. 2,000 to 3,000 heads per show, sold out night after night. Loudness wasn't just building a fan base, they were actually igniting one. Japan had not seen a metal band hit this hard, this fast, and it cracked the whole scene wide open. And the success, it didn't just boost ticket sales, it kicked the door down for every hungry hard rock act in the country. Labels started listening, bands started forming, floodgates opened, and within a few years, Japanese metal was in full bloom. But make no mistake, Loudness lit the fuse. Everyone else just followed the smoke. Now, Loudness wasn't content with just owning Japan, they wanted more. And their sound sharp and fast. With American engineer Daniel McClendon behind the boards, their second and third albums, Devil Soldier in '82 and The Law of Devil's Land in '83, leveled up hard. These records could stand next to anything coming out of the US or Europe at the time. Loudness was carving out their own signature, fast, technical, clean, but dangerous. And then came July 1983, the first American tour. 1 month later, Europe. Overseas crowds were not just curious, they were actually hooked. And Loudness felt it. It wasn't just a one-off cultural novelty. They had a real shot at breaking worldwide. In California, they hit the club circuit and got a glimpse of what was bubbling under the surface, a full-blown underground metal explosion. In San Francisco, they crossed paths with nobodies named Metallica and Slayer, just local bands then, but already crackling with menace. It was a glimpse into the future, and Loudness wanted in. Loudness hadn't even dropped a record in the States, but heads already knew. Tapes were circulating like contraband, bootlegs, imports, whispers passed hand to hand. One San Francisco record store blasted their albums daily, turning curious shoppers into diehard fans. The underground had spoken. Loudness mattered. And at the center of it all was Akira Takasaki, Japan's answer to Eddie Van Halen, or Yngwie Malmsteen. You could hear all those influences in his playing, but he definitely brought something totally unique to the table. He had a lot of fire under the hood, still does. Takasaki didn't just play fast, he played possessed. His technique is surgical, speed flat out obscene, but there's always a sense of melody behind the shred. Hooks, structure, killer riffs. He wasn't just showing off, he was building songs. Melodic, heavy, and airtight. His solos like kamikaze missions, beautiful, violent, and locked on friggin' target. Now, the real breakthrough came in 1984 when an A&R rep from Atlantic Records caught one of Loudness's US sets and got it. No translation needed. He signed them on the spot to Atco Records, making Loudness the first Japanese metal band to land a major US record deal. Totally historic and a straight-up win. They hit LA and teamed up with Max Norman, Ozzy Osbourne's guy, to cut what would become their international calling card, Thunder in the East. Released in January of 1985, it exploded back home, hitting number 4 in Japan. But the big win was the States. The record cracked the Billboard 200, climbed to number 74, and held its ground for 19 straight weeks. Loudness had officially crossed over. And then came Crazy Nights, their anthem. Hey, hey, hey. Nihara was scatting nonsense during vocal takes, and the band just kept it. Why? Because it friggin' hit. Sounded cool. But that guitar solo on there? I remember hearing it for the first time on the radio, and when that guitar solo hit, something happened. Because right in the middle of that guitar solo, Akira did something that you just didn't hear, and especially on the radio. It was as if he took it slightly out of key, to a trained ear anyways. But to somebody who wasn't used to guitar solos like this, he hit like a full-on superhuman. Totally from another planet. And of course the song had the chanting in it. Loudness didn't just break into the global market, they kicked in the freaking door and yelled gibberish on the way in. And somehow it all worked. By 1985, Loudness proved that they are here to stay. April brought their first U.S. tour, and by August they're opening for Motley Crue, peak Motley Crue, coked up and crowd devouring. Then on August 14th, they made history. The first Japanese band to play Madison Square Garden. Less of a gig and more of a full-on coronation, and they earned it. Loudness tore up the stage with military precision and Takasaki's 6-string firepower, building a reputation as one of the tightest live bands on the circuit. But while crowds were growing, the cracks were as well. The 1986 follow-up, Shadows of War, rebranded for the U.S. as Lightning Strikes, still charted strong, climbing the number 64 on Billboard. Let It Go became their first radio-ready hit, all catchy hooks and sleek production, but the shine came at a cost. Max Norman pushed for more complexity, and the sessions were just getting harder and harder, heavier, less instinctive. Loudness wasn't just evolving, they were actually adapting, and not really on their own terms. And the result? A slicker, more commercial sound built for American radio, but it landed awkwardly back home. Japanese fans heard the shift and didn't really like what it meant. Loudness, by that point, were just so in your face. This was a band that would smack you on the forehead and surprise the living crap out of you. And yet, now, all of a sudden, they're starting to sound like they're getting diluted by commercialism. They weren't angry, just abandoned. The band was making noise in the U.S., but losing part of themselves in the process. The drift had started. By 87, the balancing act was slipping. Hurricane Eyes hit in August with Eddie Kramer, famous for his work on Hendrix and Zeppelin and Kiss at the controls. And it was polished, tight, packed with ambition. Loudness still charted in the U.S., number 190 on Billboard, but the writing was on the wall. The boom was fading and the band knew it. And to show they hadn't forgotten where they come from, they dropped 2 versions, one in English, one in Japanese. It was a nod to the fans who had been there since day one. Special, they called them, because they were. But underneath the dual language diplomacy, the seams were tearing. The pressure to keep climbing, to match the power of Thunder in the East was eating at them. Friction was building up and the vibe had shifted. And then when the album Jealousy dropped in May of 88, Japan only, it felt like a retreat. And then in December, they dropped the bomb. Nihara, the voice of Loudness, was out. Fired, gone, no warning. The band made the call, chasing a bigger piece of the American market by replacing him with a U.S. singer. It was a move soaked in desperation. They had tasted global attention and wanted the full bite. But what came next wasn't fame, it was fallout. Fans were stunned. Industry heads shook. Instead of just swapping out vocalists, they actually cut out the soul of the band. Loudness was not evolving anymore. They were rolling the dice, and the odds were not good. And the search for a new voice actually dragged on. It was just brutal and aimless. Dozens of auditions. No fire, no fit. And at the time, they were looking within Japan. And eventually, they stopped looking inside Japan because nobody could touch what Nihara brought. So in September of 89, Loudness crossed the line and brought in Mike Viscera from Obsession, an American frontman, strategic play, and a full pivot. And Viscera has a serious friggin' vocal range. So yeah, he's definitely a heavy hitter, filling a big pair of shoes, but it landed with a thud. The Viscera era gave them Soldier of Fortune and On the Prowl. The first had a few sparks, You Shook Me, not the Zeppelin version, or the Beck version, but it even cracked some video rotations, but the second one just felt limp. On the Prowl was part rehash, part filler, all compromised. It repackaged older Japanese tracks with new lyrics, trying to look sleek for American radio, and wound up pleasing nobody. There's a clear stab at the Sunset Strip sound. Glossy hooks, neutered edge, but it came late, and it came shaky. The Japanese fan base? Devastated. To make matters worse, the tide had already turned. Grunge was now cracking the foundation. Labels were running scared. And Loudness? By this point, they're clinging to a sinking ship. Meanwhile, Minoru Nihara was reeling. He didn't walk, he was pushed. Kicked out, he said, lost everything. His world collapsed. So he built a new one, his solo debut. Pedaled 1 came out in 89, stacked with ringers. Doug Aldrich, Mark Slaughter, Steve Smith, who's one of the baddest drummers around today from Journey, as well as Ross Valerie. How they even brought in the Tower of Power horns section. It should have been huge, but the record wandered. Some tracks hit, others veered off. Production was muddy. Lyrics leaned cliche. His voice, always full throttle, sometimes felt overcooked on the ballads. But the effort, unquestionable. He gave 110% even when the map was missing. And years later, Nihara finally listened to the Viscera records, not with bitterness, but with surprise. He said, damn, they're pretty freaking good. And you could tell he meant it. But Mike Viscera was gone by 91, bounced after the Slap in Face EP to chase fire with Yngwie Malmsteen. No love lost, no dramatic farewell, just another name off the roster. Then bassist Masayoshi Yamashita, Akira's childhood friend, the Foundation left in 92. That one hit hard. With him gone, the second era of Loudness officially flatlined. What was left was a band with no anchor and no clear direction. And what followed was chaos. The 90s hit Loudness like a wood chipper. Lineups were shifting, styles mutating. They entered what fans called the third era, and it started with some serious star power. Masaki Yamada on vocals, who is ex-EZO, a killer Japanese metal band, full growl, and Taji Sawada on bass, fresh out of X, Japan, arguably the biggest rock band in the country at that time. Loudness dropped a self-titled record in 92, and the album came in swinging, charting at number 2 domestically. It sounded nothing like the Loudness of old. This is post-glam, post-Viscera, post-bullshit. Takasaki threw out the rulebook and dialed straight into a heavy, groove-laced, borderline thrash assault. Think Pantera with precision. Think Megadeth with a katana. Loudness mutated, and the message was clear: no more chasing charts. This time they're chasing blood. But by early 93, the wheels came off again. Taiji Sawada and Munetaka Higuchi bailed right after a winter tour. No big send-off, just gone. And for the first time since 81, Loudness looked like it might actually fold. But Akira Takasaki refused to let it die. Enter Era 4. In 94, Masaki Yamada returned on vocals. Hiro Homa, also from EZO, came in on drums. And with no bass player in place, Takasaki just played the damn thing himself. Heavy metal hippies dropped that year, with Takasaki wearing every hat he could. Guitar, bass, writing, producing. Eventually, Naoto Shibata from Anthem stepped in on bass to stabilize the lineup, but the sonic insanity was already underway. In the back half of the 90s, Full Identity Freefall, Ghetto Machine in 97, Dragon 98, Engine in 99, one after another. They kept dropping records, each one morphing into something stranger. Alt metal grooves, new metal, even rap metal flirtations. On Dragon, Takasaki ditched solos on some tracks. The guy once hailed as a Japanese Van Halen, intentionally clipping his own wings. We know another certain band that did something like that. It didn't go well. Leave a comment down below as to which band you think that is. But by this point, Loudness didn't sound like Loudness. Fans didn't know what to do with it. Some of it felt like an entirely different band. They're trying everything, but the magic that once lit up Madison Square Garden was nowhere in sight. By 2000, something shifted. After years of lineup roulette and chasing shadows, Akira started thinking about the past, the real Loudness. Masaki, still holding the mic, saw the writing on the wall when he said it outright. It's time. So for the 20th anniversary, Akira picked up the phone, called Nihara, and the answer came easy. Good timing. The classic lineup, Nihara, Takasaki, Yamashita, and Higuchi, reformed in May of 2000. And in March 2001, Spiritual Canoe hit the shelves. Fans showed up, loud and loyal. What was supposed to be a short run, maybe a year or two, never ended. Chemistry was still there. Nihara said it best. They were older, wiser, less reckless. The chaos of the 80s had burned off, and what remained was focus. But in April 2008, tragedy blindsided them. Munetaka Higuchi was diagnosed with liver cancer. He passed away that November, just 49 years old, a founding member, a brother, gone. The Loudness didn't fold, they honored. For 2009's The Everlasting, Akira Takasaki pulled from Higuchi's archived drum sessions, isolated grooves, and they built the album around these, a final performance from beyond. Masayuki Amp Pan Suzuki stepped in on the drums the same year. And in 2010, they dropped King of Pain. In 2011, they hit the States for the 30th anniversary tour. Still loud and still standing. In 2015, they brought Mike Viscera back on stage at Loud Park for Soldier of Fortune set. One night, one era, no strings. Mike made it clear, Nihara was the voice. Always had been, always would be. Then in 2017, another blow. Amp Pan suffered a stroke. Ryuichi Nishida filled in for touring, including Loudness's long overdue first tour of Australia in 2019. Through it all, Nihara stayed steady. Amp Pan's recovery comes first. Loudness kept going, not for charts or trends, for the music, for each other, for the ones they had lost. By 2018, Loudness dropped Rise to Glory, the 27th studio album. No filler or phoning it in, just fresh fire from a band that refused to rust. And then came Sunburst in 2021, album number 28. In a world drowning in reunion tours and tribute acts, Loudness stayed locked on the new. Nihara said it best. They weren't here to be a nostalgia act or ride on coattails of the past or whatever. It's got to be about continuing to create and keep pushing that envelope. And the plan is they just want to keep touring the globe as long as their bodies hold up. Not because they have to, but because they want to. The thing about Loudness is that they weren't just Japan's first real export to the metal world. They're one of the only ones still standing and still swinging. That's not luck, that is total legacy. To my subscribers, thank you. You totally frigging rock. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet, throw some wasabi all over that subscribe button and lap it up. And then for dessert, throw even more wasabi on the like button and lap that one up too. Join the family, and I want to thank you so much for watching.